Love Your Wife podcast. It's a Love Your Wife podcast. The Love Your Wife podcast. Love Your Wife. Love Your Wife podcast. The Love Your Wife podcast. The Love Your Wife podcast. Love Your Wife.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by aplanandplace.net. A Plan and Place sells customized planners for homeschool families. They help parents and students breeze through their homeschooling days. There's a planner for every age: early learners, elementary school, junior high, high school, and homeschool moms. Right now, you can get 10% off your entire order if you go to aplanandplace.net/loveyourwife and use the coupon code loveyourwife. That's aplanandplace.net/loveyourwife and use the coupon code loveyourwife. A Plan and Place, homeschool planners to help you breeze through your homeschooling days. My wife absolutely loves this planner. She uses it for our son. We were thinking about homeschooling, but we didn't really have a plan in place. So when we got this planner, it really kind of mapped out the day and showed us where we needed to go. She really loves it. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Frickin' Frack Foods. This is 5-star in a jar, made with San Marzano tomatoes, no sugar added, no preservatives, no seed oils, crafted by hand at small batch production. When you try this sauce, there's no going back. Every time I go to Sprouts, I have to come back with a jar of this sauce, or my wife's upset. She's not really upset. She's more disappointed in me because I should know better. I should bring back this sauce for her. So if you're looking for this sauce, you can go to Sprouts. If you live in Georgia, you can go to Publix. You can go to frickinfrackfoods.com, and they have a nice little cafe in Canton, Georgia. Look them up, frickinfrackfoods.com.
This is Love Your Wife podcast with your host, Dennis Byrne, and today we have a very special guest, Richard Kipple. Richard reached out to me, and he's a part of this, what is it, marriage? It's not counseling. What is it? For some reason or another, I have a hard time remembering this particular. It's a retreat.
Well, we do retreats, right, for individuals and couples. Let's not just say for couples only.
Okay. All right. So Richard reached out to me, and him and his wife, they're in the process of doing these retreats and writing books. And he sent me some of his backstory. It looked very interesting. So I thought it would be a great conversation, and it's something that we can learn from together. So hello, Richard. How are you doing?
Great, Dennis. Glad to meet you, man.
Would you like to give yourself an introduction? Introduce yourself.
Introduce myself. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I thought you were going to do this, but okay, sure. Sure.
I don't want to sell you short.
Did it sell me short? Yeah.
Yeah. You've been alive for like 69 years, right? I mean,
yeah, almost. We'll be in June. Oh, okay. Yeah. So the short version versus the long version, which my wife always says, "Don't you talk too much," is that, from a relationship viewpoint, since that's really our perspective, and in some of our beloved situation with our beloveds, meaning my wife, this is my second marriage that I'm in with my wife, and we've been married for approximately now, I guess, about 8 years after this fall. And we both have gone through our own journeys, being married and relationships and all these other things. And I was, for example, she was 20 years as a lawyer, family law. So she got to see people breaking up for 20 years and all the horrific stuff that obviously happens with the children, with this and that. She also was a child advocate and other things as well. So she saw a lot of that world. Whereas I was for about 30 years in high tech, 20 plus years in Silicon Valley. So I had this other experience of living overseas, doing a bunch of other stuff in high tech. And, I did stuff that was here, phones, routers, switch. I mean, anything electronic, I was in the middle of that out in Silicon Valley. So we have two different backgrounds from that perspective. But one of the things that we shared in common that 7-8 years ago when we met on Match.com, believe it or not, was our center. And our center is our spirituality, our commitment to our faith. And, we don't necessarily have a faith per se, a religious faith. We both grew up Catholic, but we have a broader religious background and faith about how do we believe the world is, how do we behave in it. And as our own belief systems were we're responsible primarily for ourselves in a relationship, we're responsible for our own journey. We're looking for each other to support us in that. And that's what we found in each other 7, 8 years ago as the basis, and started there from our relationship. So, as human beings, we have a lot of water underneath the bridge, a lot of winds, a lot, got the scars to prove it, as they would say. But the bottom line is that we've learned through experience, I believe, how to, and with Sedona Soul Adventures, which is the company we're both running right now, which does focus on individuals and couples and doing retreats for them and helping them with their issues, is that we've learned a lot about how to help and look at couples in addition to ourselves, because we're the crucible of our own experience. We've learned the hard way, and we found bliss, we found happiness, we found joy, we found excitement. All these things people, I believe, would like in what we call a high vibe relationship. So we've got a little bit of experience to share, and that's what we're doing, and doing it every day when we wake up in the morning and snuggle, for example.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's nice that you're doing a retreat, not just for the couples, but the individuals, because I think that's one of the things that I guess it's becoming more mainstream is counseling, right? But retreats aren't necessarily counseling, right? It's just working on yourself.
Well,
with kind of a program, right?
Well, for us, we call them retreats, and for us, for example, the structure of it, to give you a sense of it, is that for individuals, we have 3 or 4 days worth of sessions. We have 2 or 3 sessions a day, and each session does one of many things. Either it's an emotional clearing, or somebody looking at core wounds, or somebody doing breath work, with some of the things. And depending upon what the individual needs, we structure, because we have 50 different practitioners with different modalities. We just kind of Lego plug it in what's right for you, because everybody's unique. I mean, one of the things both she and I found, I don't know if you've gone to any like workshops or stuff with 1,000 of your favorite friends, is that, never, those workshops really aren't tuned for you. They're tuned for a general message. So they tend to be informational, not transformational in nature. And so we really believe in getting the deep work there with people who are interested in doing that. Not everybody is. And so whether it's an individual or a couple, there's different issues, of course, but it's the same idea of customizing a curriculum, or for couples, it's 4 to 5 days of getting them and working them through what the pieces of the puzzle are to help them get to the next level. Some people, say, for instance, couples, since we're talking mainly that right now, we find some couples come in because they said, our kids have gone out of the house. We're empty nesters. We're at a certain period of our life now that we're tailing off in our careers. We're looking at retirement, and we're trying to figure out now, what do we want to do? How do we look at each other, and how do we energize or get that spark back we had as we were newlyweds 40 years ago? So people like that come in, or people come in with crises. For example, fortunately, we've got some people come in have infidelities, and getting underneath what was really going on without blame and all this other stuff. We've got techniques and such to do that. And in some cases, and in our book, we talk about one couple, we use these processes we're developed and share in the book. Is, it was very, very weird on why he stepped out and why she was so angry. And then we kind of helped them through what their own needs, personal needs were. And once we figured out, and they figured out what it was, we began to say, well, were your needs being met? Because the premise that we have about our relationship, as well as any other couples, is this: beyond you taking responsibility for your own journey and your own inner work, are you nurturing your partner in the way they want to be nurtured? Let's unpack that. Okay, first of all, nurturing. But the trick is nurturing them in the way they want to be nurtured. Give you an example. When I got to Sedona 2017, very excited, marrying Deborah, my wife. Everything was fine. And so I'm charging, doing this and that. We're getting involved with all this work, and we're seeing all these great things. She knew her needs. I knew mine. We did some processes with some really fabulous practitioners here. And about 2.5 years into the relationship, I noticed she wasn't really as happy as I was expecting her to be. It's like, and so I kind of did some self-reflection. And what I realized is that I was nurturing her in the way I wanted to nurture her, not the way she wanted to be nurtured.
Yeah.
And it's a distinct difference, and it's subtle but really important. And so I, instead of making a big deal out of it, what I did, Dennis, is I simply started doing that. I simply said, okay, I won't resist her ideas so much. I won't have my ego involved so much. I'll back off and let her, because she's a very smart, intelligent, beautiful woman too. Let's get the bus code 2 wheels, right? And when I did that, a couple months later, I was standing in the kitchen or in the dining room. She walked up to me and she kind of cocked her head at me and said, there's something different going on here. I don't know why, but I'm feeling really good. What's going on?
Nice.
And I told her, I said, and then you know what she did? She
What?
came up and gave me the biggest hug and kiss to say thank you for seeing me. Because all she really wanted, as I believe all of our wives and even husbands, we want too, is to be seen for who we are, to respect our needs that we want and we have built in, and we claim it's built in at birth. That's all we want to do, is have our needs met and nurtured by our partner. If you do those things, then really amazing possibilities occur for relationships. And it doesn't matter what type of relationship you have. It really doesn't. But if you nurture your partner in the way they want to be nurtured, and we have also our thoughts of, we check in and we do this and do that. But the basic premise is, are you doing the work that way? And if the answer is yes, you have the possibility of just expanding. Well, there's no ceiling to your relationship then, in our opinion. It just really isn't.
Oh yeah. No, those are a bunch of great things that you brought up. And when I thought about what you just said, was the love languages.
Right.
And
Right.
a lot of different people, they talk about that, where they show their love language to their partner, but it's not their love language. So they
Right.
think that they're doing great, and they feel like they're doing great. And their love language isn't,
Right.
they're not matching up. Like
Right.
they want quality time. They don't want like words of affirmation.
Right. And
So
and what we've also
but
found, Dennis, is that the
Mhm.
love languages is not good enough.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that when you take the love languages, they give you a survey, as many do, and when you fill them in, you can kind of game the survey because it's your inputs.
Yeah.
It's subjective. And as a result, you tweak the results. So what we're talking about is a birth information assessment, which is sort of involved. You're born a certain date, time, and place. So when you have a nurturing needs set, it's based on that. And that doesn't change. And so there's no subjectivity to it, if you believe in that
Okay.
stuff. And we do. And what we've seen is, after years and years of using this technique, it connects with people over and over and over, and it gives them a viewpoint. And again, it's AKA similar to love languages in the intent, but it's much more precise, much more accurate. And we've now have thousands of couples proof of that in our retreats and the results. So, if love language was the better, we'd have used that. But what we found is this great technique of really doing what we call the nurturing code. So that, to your point, is exactly right, though. But if you understand the other your partners, they understand it, you understand it, and vice versa.
Mhm.
Then you have that moment in this process that we have, whether it's retreats or couples by themselves, where you look at each other and say, well, are you willing to give her, and is she willing to give you what you want in the way they want? And guess what? This is a yes or no question. We call it the spiritual pivot. Because at that moment, you have to declare out loud, I'm in 100%. No 99%, no like 51, 49. Nope. If you're committed to your partner, and we believe in long-term relationships, we believe in committed relationships, that either you're all in, yes, or you're not. Fish or cut bait, that's it. And when you get to the point of that, and when people finally come to the point is, yeah, I'm all in, it's amazing. But we've also found, Dennis, that on a few cases, some people aren't, which surprises us. It's like, they've been here for 25 years together, and yet they can't yet, for some reason, do that. Now, we don't necessarily give up on our retreats, because that's where the real work begins. You go like underneath, like, why are you here? Why are you resisting? And then when you start to unlock those, giving you understanding their core wounds or understanding their communication styles, you add these pieces in. What you find then is ways for people to see their relationship in a different and new way.
Yeah.
And when they do that, magic happens. I mean, magic stuff. I mean, people have literally come here to Sedona with a divorce decree to be signed by both of them. Last ditch stuff. And after this session, they're ripping it up and they have a recommitment ceremony before they go home. It happens. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, there were some
It's
things
gotta make you feel great.
Oh, it does. I mean,
Yeah.
We, like you do, Chelsea, your wife, we have this fundamental belief that, the world runs on relationships, certainly in your primary relationship, which is your family, your partner. And if that's going good, the rest of the world's whatever, it's fine. But if it isn't, my first marriage, when it wasn't going good, when I went to the office, man, I just wasn't very happy because my primary relationship was not happy as well. So, we also look at the Harvard studies you probably saw, or I think it's Harvard study that looked at 80 years of relationships. And they said the number one predictor of success in your life and happiness is your significant relationship. We're all in.
Yeah. And that just makes so much sense, right? Because when you're going into work and your relationship's not where you want it to be, when you're at work doing your work, you're probably 10, 20% thinking about your significant other.
Right.
Like, why is it like now I got to go home? Like, why do I got to go home? Like, I can't believe I got to go home. It just becomes one of those things where it's always in the background. So you can't really focus. You want to focus, but you can't. So when you have all that relationship and your wife, and all that's great, it's easy to really just focus and do your job and do other things. And then with that, you get support,
Well, that's
so
true.
You're like, oh, I can't barely do my work now. And you feel bogged down, but I do my job and I do this and I work out and I do jujitsu because my wife supports everything I do.
Right. Right. Because she knows.
Great feeling.
Right. Because it's beautiful. She's nurturing you in the way you want to be nurtured, which means she supports your wanting to be physically active and both for your job purposes, obviously, as well as your own internal purpose in jiu-jitsu, such as the mental and an energetic practice in addition to the physical stuff. So you're connecting all those things in our world. That's what we'd say. So it's a wonderful support to feel from your spouse. It's beautiful.
Do you do these retreats for anyone, or is it mostly for people that are on the outs? All right.
Everyone. Yeah. I mean, individuals and couples. I mean, some people come here because they just said, I just want to up my game. Okay, sure. Let's get you from here to here. So we figure out what where here is. What do you think the blocks are? We help you go clear all these blocks off, because we also believe that everybody is born and has a core wound, that, we're all different. Our core wounds are different. And if you can figure out how to clear them out and take that, we think in terms of energy, like it's stuck into your body. If you can get it somatically out of your body, your life gets calmer, a little easier, more at peace. Guess what? Then it's not as hard to do whatever you want to do. So it doesn't matter whether you're in crisis or you just want to up your game. Yeah, we help anybody who wants to do that.
That's awesome.
But
Sedona is a beautiful place.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
I kind of have that background. I was trying to figure out how to actually show a background thing of Cathedral Rock, which is our standard Zoom. Can I say that in this channel?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Maybe, I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Yeah, it is a beautiful place. And what we find is that the actual energy fields, if you believe in vortexes, which we have vortexes here, actually helps people in their journey, in their bringing stuff up, because the energy naturally brings us in this gunk up to the surface to be looked at. And so it helps people who come here with the intention, which is also important, to want to change their lives, to improve their lives. Some people call that transform. It helps. So Sedona, it helps that. And of course, hiking around the gorgeous, we only have 400 miles of trails here, only 400.
Yeah, my wife and I were actually there probably. I think that's where we actually conceived our kid. So maybe like
Well,
four four
that's
years
a
ago.
blessing of
Yeah.
it. Namaste.
Yeah. Maybe it was the vortex, Never know.
I don't know.
But yeah, I appreciate you sharing this. I feel like retreats are thought of a lot like going to therapy. There's kind of a negative thing about it, but I feel like there's nothing wrong with just trying to get better, right?
Oh, there's nothing right. We 100% approve, and but the things we don't do, just to segment out a bit, we're not the green juice and sit by the hot tub type of deal.
Okay.
We're kind of we're not. If you want to do that, great, green grass juice, whatever green juice. There are other places here in Sedona to do that. We're for people who are to be a little bit frank, really serious. I mean, if you're here I just want to come to play with my friends, and no, that's not what we're talking. We're talking about people who come here seriously with the intent there's something they want to go work on. And if that's what you want, we'll accept you on in, because we have these amazing practitioners, and we want to reserve them to the people who really want to do the work, to be more than blunt.
Awesome. So let's get in the interview process here. So lately I've been asking people that have been married before. I've been married before. I'm on my second marriage. I like to talk about the first relationship that they've been in, and the divorce, and then what you've learned from that. And because I feel like a lot of people, when they get divorced for the first time, they think that their life's over. It's never going to get better. They're never going to find anyone else. All these negative terms, but I think it's just an opportunity to learn. Maybe you guys just weren't right for each other. Because I think the more I interview people, the more I think that, people just find the person they're supposed to be with. My Aunt Betty, she's been married for 60 years.
Wow.
We're getting ready to...
Congrats.
Yeah,
that's really hard to do.
Chelsea's, my wife's grandparents, they're celebrating their 60th anniversary. So, yeah, it's just interesting but basically what they're saying is they married the right person. I feel like I married the right person. Sometimes I don't know, maybe that's part of the retreat thing. You go in there and you can rededicate yourself. Also, I think that without knowing, you become a little selfish. It's always like, what are they doing for me? What are they doing for me? And when you're not really putting anything out.
Right.
But that's why I like talking about the first marriage, because you can you can learn from those mistakes that maybe you made, or maybe they weren't your fault. Maybe they kind of just fell into it.
Well, the philosophy Deborah and I, my wife, have about our previous marriages and relationships, to broaden the question out, or the answer out a little bit, is that we believe in the term soul contracts. I don't know if you're familiar with that, where everybody has a soul. And that prior to coming here to experience this thing we call 3D, we've already made arrangements that we're going to get together in a relationship, and we're both going to learn something out of it. And learn doesn't necessarily mean it's painless, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes, for me, when I looked at my first marriage, I married a very brilliant, incredible woman, and all this other, who was brilliant engineer and all this stuff, but had problem with her personal skills, and she was rather rough, and I was looking for something else, and she also had a child, so I said, well, instant family, because I got married late. This was great. And so I let some things slide that, in terms of the communication stuff, that I kind of felt, but I was like, you know what? Maybe marriage is supposed to include this type of stuff in to learn from, thinking that one of two things would happen. Either I would learn how to deal with it better, or she would change. Oops, did I just say that? Yeah. And that's, of course, the killer, and you don't realize that. So, 12 years later, we're divorced, and that's 20 years ago for me. And so when I go back and look back at me being young, not really understanding what it takes to be in relationship, I, for example, I feel so, I don't want to use the word, I feel so sorry, but I'm so worried about the current generation of young men and women growing up today, because they're role models of, how do you have a relationship? What is a relationship based on? Certainly young men, is kind of off. There's really
Yeah.
not a model for them for success. I learned the old-fashioned way by test of fire, and I realized, well, that didn't work. But also, I realized when I was in that it all wasn't her,
Mhm.
and I realized I contributed by being a jerk. For example, and this is not a proud thing, but this is what happened. Is I never apologized to her in 12 years for anything, because in the business world, only the weak apologize. Now, grok that for a bit. It took me a while to look in the mirror and go like, well, hold it here, dude. You really were a jerk to her. No wonder she was so upset with me as we got divorced, because I had 12 years of building up no apology, when I really should have thought about her emotions and stuff, and I was not. So you know what? I wasn't a good husband either. So you know what? Not a good husband, not a good wife, not a good fit. It was better we were that. Now, the hard part with those types of incendiary partings is the children. And they got smashed in the emotions and all the stuff wrapped around a multi-year divorce. And, I'm rolling my head because it was horrific for everybody. Because I had built up so much animosity and anger on her part, justly so, because I was, 12 years, don't apologize to somebody, see what happens.
Yeah.
I get it now. And, if I were sitting next to her right now, I would say, I am sorry for what I did. Please forgive me, because I was really a jerk. And maybe someday she'll hear that. Maybe someday she'll understand it. But no, so I learned a lot of lessons. And then after that, realized, after I met other people, that every relationship I had after that was one of which I learned from and grew from as a human being, and became more aware of what was important to me. And I was real lucky, to be honest with you, Dennis, because I met some really amazing ladies who I'm still friends with today. I had half year long relationships, and one of them actually said, "Look, Richard, I'm going to teach you how to be in a better relationship." How cool is that, right? It's like I'm going to help you get to the next level in our relationship by letting you know this, and this. A woman wants this, and this, not that. What you're offering, and what I was offering was the one-sided version, not the two-sided. To your point earlier, so yeah, and that allowed me over the years, with all those learned lessons, to basically back in 2016 come to the realization that the reason why I was not successful in a long-term relationship, which I was desiring, was that I was not the best version who I could be to attract a woman of the same ilk. Because if I'm say, for instance, vibrational here and she's here, there's no way I'm going to be attractive. I have to get my game up. And so I changed my Match.com profile from playing 4 ice hockey teams and being a college hockey team advisor, Division I, and other things. My kids were playing hockey. I had San Jose Sharks, season tickets, everything all hockey, which basically had my profile. If you don't like hockey, you need not apply. It was an honest statement. But why would you want to date a guy like that?
Yeah,
And so I changed it, right? I mean, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I changed it. And 2 weeks after I changed it, my current wife showed up. So the universe, once you finally get it straight, is my also lesson I learned from that first marriage, that when you finally get it together, you get rewarded with a beautiful relationship, which I've been with for the last 7 years.
So at what point did you come to that realization that you didn't apologize for their whole relationship? And what did you go to therapy, or did you read a
No.
couple books, or did you
No.
just one day wake up
No,
and be
I
like,
drank the Kool-Aid. We have a company that, that helps individuals and couples with their own stuff. So my wife and I, because we're so committed to our own journey, we actually have weekly sessions with our practitioners about our own stuff. I mean, one of the people that helped us with our book, some of the content, we were kind of being coached by him on needs and how do you do these needs, and the spiritual pivot. We were kind of the beta test for him on this whole process. We were the first people who used the concept of spiritual pivot. So we learned from that, and I learned from that. And then as I reflected back in my life, as you get older, I think you have a little bit more quiet time to kind of look at that. I realized after talking to my wife, Deborah, wow, I kind of was a jerk, and came to that realization. It wasn't like a bolt of lightning or anything. It was just slowly coming to realize that, there was another side to that story, her side. And there was a disappointment to her because she loved me, but I was not treating her like I loved her. Fair enough. I get it. So no, those happen over time. And it's hard to say, what was the exact thing, but I think it's like anything. It just takes time to clear out all the noise to get to that truth of what I really was in that relationship.
No, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. I feel like that's the hardest thing to do is kind of look in the mirror, and say, oh, maybe it was me. It's usually, like I said, it's pretty a selfish thing.
Yeah.
Some people get selfish in their relationships. They don't think about the other person at all. It's just what they're not doing.
Right.
It's not what I can do better. So I do appreciate you sharing that.
Sure.
All right. So you say you met on Match.com,
Mm-hmm.
right? Were you still living in San Jose at the time?
Oh, yeah.
All right. And she was in Sedona.
That's right.
All right. So how did you guys actually decide to meet up? Where did you meet up? What was the first date like?
The first date was on Skype.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm going to go back for a bit. For that first moment, we actually interacted on Match.com. So I changed my profile. And it's, for those who know Match.com, you have different levels. You have likes, and you do this and this or whatever. And, I saw her profile. I said, this woman looks pretty cool. She lives in a really nice place, but I like your profile. So I dinged her and a like. At the time, she just got done with the TV show she was shooting in LA. So she was on Santa Monica Beach with her sister at sunset drinking champagne, which they enjoy. It's one of the things they like. She hears a ding. She looks at her phone and says, shows it to her sister. Looked at my profile. Her sister goes, he's cute. Maybe I won't sell this guy. Forget it, because she saw I was in San Jose. She had a rule that anything more than a couple hours was too far away. And so from that part where we kind of went back and forth a couple times, we agreed a couple weeks later to basically call each other on Skype. And we started that conversation then in November. And then what we found is, every other night we spent 2.5 hours on Skype. And we started to really get to know each other, which to me was really, really important because, I was always rushing into relationships way too fast. And it was my bad. And I realized when I was first talking with her and we actually looked and compared some of our library and such. And there's this book by John Gray you might have heard before, Men Are From Mars, Women from Venus, but it was the one on a date. That version of it, which is how do people enter into relationships? We both had my own model, she had her own model. So we agreed on reading this book as the way we're going to talk about how we're entering consciously into our relationship, and whether it worked or worked, it doesn't. But let's use this model. So we agreed to that. And so we went through step 1, step 2, step 3, et cetera. And we're talking about that on our Skype calls. And it gave us, again, a chance to deepen our relationship, to connect at a different level, to really understand about each other before we actually met then, because I was teaching college at the time. So I had a spring break. So over the holidays, January, then in 2017, I came out to Sedona. I stayed at an Airbnb, bread and breakfast, some of her friends, which of course I got the 20 questions like, who are you? What, are you going to be good enough for my friend? Which is perfect, right? Because she has friends that are that productive. Great. And then we went to lunch and we just started to talk and, started that way. And so what I'm saying is that our first meeting physically was like 6-8 weeks after we started really to get to know each other on Skype. Again, dates us meaning Skype versus Zoom. But it was a really good way for us to get to know each other. And the pressure was off. And I was, taking my time. I wasn't rushing it, which was really, really good. Because I realized if I was going for the long-term relationship, what's the rush? I can come back tomorrow. I can call her next week. No big deal. Because if we're thinking long-term, that week will be insignificant compared to the long run. So we both played, I call it the long game, and we both did. And ultimately, then that October, got married.
Okay, so all right, so you got married in October. So how long was that since the first actual meeting in Sedona?
Well, January of that year, physically.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, well, it's really fast. I mean, some
Yeah.
people say, like October, 10 months or whatever is fast. Yeah, I would say so. But we also have this other belief in reincarnation. Some people do, some people don't. And what we have found out in our past, we've had past lives together. So we had this familiarity with each other, and that helped us in this case. I wouldn't necessarily say that if you don't believe in any of that stuff, that some people just have a connection, right? You call it, well, it's like I've known you forever, and you can't explain it. Well, maybe you can. We kind of went that way because we have the people in Sedona who look into those things in past lives, which is part of the technology we got out here. And it was real interesting that we've had some, and I think that helped us in really establishing a good foundation for a relationship that was solid based upon familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was
That's
only
great.
10 months in this lifetime.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It was one of the questions I like to ask is like, why did you want to marry that person? But you just answered that. Pretty flawlessly there.
Well, we'd been married. We'd been married before, like 89 million times, or it wasn't about that many by count from we could tell, but a bunch more. Yeah.
How did you propose?
Now, there is kind of a debate on this story. So I'll say there are, you talked about how sometimes your wife goes, hey, did you tell that story that way? Yeah. There's two versions of the story, to be honest. So I had some friends who, well, let's put it this way. Step back for a second. I'll get the timing, obviously, if you're talking 10 months from getting to know physically to marriage, a lot of things condense. And given our connection and coming here, we decided that every 2 weeks we'd go either way. I would go to Sedona or she would come out to San Jose, depending upon which 2 weeks you go back and forth. So every month you would take a trip. So we'd been planning out through the beginning of the year, and I had some friends who lived in Aruba, and I said, hey, nice. I call them up, and very quickly I kind of realized she's the one. So as I was going back from my visit I was in the Phoenix airport, calling my friends up from Aruba. Hey, I think I found the one. I would like to come out to Aruba. This time frame. Got any suggestions? And they said they had a timeshare on Eagle Beach. If you know Aruba, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous beach in the northwest side of the island. And by the way, he's a fire chief there, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so he's fire guy too. But so they said, yeah, take our week timeshare. Well, stay there. And I said, well, okay, well, then you have to tell me about, where's the best place to propose to a woman? And so they said, well, here's this place called Passions on the Beach. And what Passions on the Beach is essentially it's on the beach, and every night they put fresh tables on the beach in tiki torches. And there's maybe 40 tables or stuff, and they bring everything out. And it's a beautiful evening. It's gorgeous. And it's like eating dinner out by the sea. Oh, my gosh. So we had dinner, and we had the big sparkly stuff for stuff. And this is where the debate gets a little fuzzy here. Did Richard actually have his knee on the sand? Or did he just pretend to have his knee on the sand as he proposed? Beyond that debate, I moved the gold box across. And of course, she was stunned, not expecting this because, it's kind of fast. And of course, in her mind, as she would tell us, she was saying, oh, I hope I love this ring. I hope I love this ring. I hope I love this ring. Because I never had her pick it out. In many cases, you have couples who will pick out the ring for their engagement, etc. I didn't. I rolled the dice, and thank goodness she said yes. So
let's settle the debate. You were the one.
Settle the debate.
Did you feel the coolness of the sand on your knee?
That's my claim. Okay. Her claim is your cheek was in the chair. The knee wasn't on there. You didn't do the full one. And the debate will go on until I take her back to Passions on the Beach again and reenact it with probably both knees in the sand just to prove it. But she did say yes. And
there you go.
took some pictures of it and immediately sent it to all of her friends, which was fabulous. And so it was really wonderful.
So from engagement to actually getting married, how long was that? How long was the time
It
frame?
was from April to October.
Okay.
4 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
And the story around that, since we like stories, once we figured out we'd do that, so I called my brother, who was going to be my best man, and she called her sister, would be here.
Nice.
And we tried to figure out, okay, so when in the future, for the rest of this year, would you guys be available to come out here to Sedona for a wedding? And there was only one weekend possible. And it's October 7th, 2017, that Saturday. So we picked it for that reason. And it was fabulous.
All right. So what is the one thing that sticks out to you about your wedding?
One thing. There was a surprise.
Okay.
Some of her dearest friends, who also were ministers, did perform the ceremony. And they had this piece of the ceremony where previous relations for my wife, Deborah, she didn't feel like her husband's had her back.
Okay.
So what they did is, and you'll just have to visualize this, is that hoop that we both stood in back to back, and then we walk our feet out like this. So your back's there and your feet are out like this. Now, understand, she's in heels, and I'm in like new shoes, which on a wet grass are slippery sliding. And so we're both like going like, we didn't want to do this. Why are you doing this to us? Right? Because, they didn't tell us we're going to do this. Right. But, we're there. We got to do it. So it kind of proved the point. Their wisdom, her friends who did the ministry, their wisdom was we could actually do it. We didn't really have the belief when we first started that there's no way I'm going to fall on my butt. Everybody's going to be there. The film is running. Oh, this is going to be awful. But no, we pulled it off.
Nice.
We didn't fall down because we had each other's back. So that was really a pleasant surprise, even though we're like, what the heck are you guys doing?
It's awesome. So after that, you guys started living together, or did you live together before that?
Yeah, I actually moved in. We started shacking in June.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so after you guys moved in, after a long distance relationship, was there any kind of struggles with that?
Of course.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean,
that's why I ask.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty obvious question. It's like, yeah, you two adults get together and, just kind of move in and, see what happens. Yeah. The first thing that I did is when I made the decision, I knew in April, and she said yes, I knew I was coming out. So I had to retire from university. So I put in all my papers for that. And then I realized I had a couple months that I'd take my house that I had in a nice neighborhood. And basically, I made the decision I'm going to give away all of my furniture to charity because there was nothing in this house I was moving into with my wife to be that was none of my man cave stuff was going to be anywhere good for that. Good enough. I had my Barco lounger and the TV, 55-inch TV, you can watch hockey. Of course, got to see the puck. There was nothing I was going to keep. So I basically hired a bunch of people to come over and take it away. And it was nice because about a month and a half, 2 months earlier, San Jose had a flood because of the heavy rains. And so they came in, took the stuff in the van, went a mile east, and then passed out all of my furniture to people who didn't have any furniture left. I thought that was really great. It's a great karma building experience.
Yeah.
And basically gave all my stuff away, but still had a bunch of boxes of books and other stuff. Apparently 40 too many boxes. So
40 is a big number.
yeah. These are all book boxes, but they're still, if you think about stacking them up inside in a garage, it's kind of it's a shock. And one of my friends I've known for years was helping me put it all in there. He's really good packer. He's up packing this 15-foot thing because I was trailering my car coming out. And he looked at me and says, does Deborah know how much you're bringing? Because he kind of had this, it's been friends before, right? So I said,
yeah.
So I took a picture of it and sent it to Deborah, and I could hear the scream in San Jose. Well, of course, right? And So the first couple months, that was the number one issue is you're messing with my chi, man. We bring all this stuff here. And so we did the one thing that she claimed she'd never, ever do in her life. Just got a storage unit, put some of the stuff out there. Of course, that helped save the marriage, or marriage to be at the time. But yeah, that was kind of tough because, when you've got, both of us were set in our ways in a way because you get used to that. And that was just sort of the surface thing that allowed us to kind of work through how do you deal with conflict. I mean, because there was one moment I took her out to the garage because she was so upset. I said, "What do you see? What do you see out here?" She said, "I see a mess." And she was, I said, "I see progress every day. I'm doing 4 boxes a day." And so it just, to me, said, "Oh, okay. That's why we actually see this situation differently. And until we figure out how to see it together, we're never going to be resolving this." And so we had the maturity to realize that, well, it took us, even after I realized that, it took a while for us to figure it out, including getting the boxes out and, hiring some guys to help me carry, because, that's still heavy stuff. I'm not a firefighter, so I'm not as buff as you guys are. But yeah, so that was the tough part. And then because we had life skills and we had these other doing coaching sessions and couple sessions essentially for us that helped us with our background and in our own spiritual work, develop a good platform, so to speak, to grow from, which turned ultimately into me getting involved in the business and then ultimately us writing this book together. So yeah, it's been a pretty interesting situation.
Oh, for sure. So why didn't you move to San Jose?
Why did she move? Because she owned a company here in Sedona. She couldn't move. It was, and the other thing, I don't know if some of your listeners also, because she was a professional woman, she owned her own business. And yeah, I was in high tech and such, but I was a lot more mobile. And I realized, it didn't matter where my love of my life lived. Whether it was San Jose or Poughkeepsie or Seattle, I don't care. The thing is where she was. And if she was there, then I was going to go there and live with her. And, her initial response was, "Well, you're moving to Sedona. Where are you going to live?" "With you." Right? She goes like, "No, you're not." No. Because no. So she had to kind of get through that. And one of her best friends, she was in New York City visiting her on her way because she does trips to Egypt and Peru and such. So she was on her way over to Egypt, which is another beautiful bonus of this beautiful woman. Her friend was at dinner with her and looked her square, and I said, "I'm your best friend." Because he says, "Are you effing crazy? Some guy's going to move from San Jose, California to move to Sedona. And you're saying, get an apartment." Okay. He goes to an apartment, and guess what's going to happen? You're not going to be like staying at 2. You're going to be together. So you're going to waste 6 months, a year of rent for this? So it kind of squared her up to realize either you're all in or you're not. And so she also had a similar, like I did. I had to be all in or not. And when I burned my boats, back in San Jose by giving everything away, that was kind of me burning my boats and bridges. And I'm not coming back. This is a one-way ticket. I'm all in. And if it goes bust, well, I guess I got a backpack and I can go somewhere.
Yeah. And you're in Sedona. It's beautiful.
But to be honest with you, when I came here, I was so tired. People would ask my wife, "Oh, was Richard really happy to be in Sedona?" She goes, "Not so much." It's like, well, because when you're doing the transition, I had 4 months of getting all this stuff done, including getting everything done and all this other stuff. I was just worn out. I was tired, and it took me a few months to actually settle down into Sedona, where when she'd walk in, we have a patio up the front that just has this gorgeous view, kind of looks behind here, kind of like what you see here. Sunsets are just glorious. Every 10 minutes, the colors change, the shapes change. It's just part of the beautiful red rocks. Apparently she came back from her office because I wasn't working at the time, right? And I was sitting there with a glass of one of my favorite red Northern California wines. And apparently my jaw was on the ground. I finally got the beauty of Sedona. I finally let it in, and it was really connecting with just the incredible place this is. And that was the last day I ever worried about not having being in love with the place again. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So with both of you guys have been divorced a couple times. Did you guys talk about divorce before you guys got married? Like,
Oh, yeah.
you say, yeah, I would imagine so, right?
Like, he was a divorce lawyer. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And she, she gave me the 20, the things she saw that were like red flags. And I had a red flag.
Okay.
And she actually said, well, the one thing you said about your ex, I'm not going to say it publicly because it's not appropriate, but it's like, when you said that, I thought I was going to hang up the phone and walk away. And so later on, we discussed what I had said. She understood that and said, oh, okay, now I understand why you said that. And, I was trying to do the full disclosure. Said, look, just letting you know, this is what I went through, and, da-da-da-da. And so once she got that sorted out and understood, okay, that was fine. But she had to get through that worst lawyer thing of, oh, yeah, you went through it. Because she picked pretty deep, because she wanted to find out if, my claim of at the time was my ex was the jerk, because I hadn't really quite gotten to the point of me taking responsibility yet, to be honest. And that was the red flag.
Okay. Makes sense.
It took some time for me, not necessarily because she was preaching to me as an ex-divorce attorney and learning, just naturally I got into a relationship that was so warm, comfortable, and she was so inviting to me and open to me, and having me be open as well. Because my wife likes to go really, really deep into things. And I wasn't really used to going deep with my partners. Certainly my first wife wasn't at all. And so it was hard for me to literally, when my wife wanted to sit down and have, the 5 words you write, that us men hate, honey, I want to have a talk. Like,
yeah.
Right. We're like, oh my God, no.
Like, what did I do?
Right. It's like, oh my God. So we panic, but she does it all the time, because that's who she is. And she's not trying to do it to teach you to be upset or anything. She just that's how she connects, by deep conversation. And that was a new thing for me. It was, I'm an engineer in the background. I deal with things versus people, but I also did sales. So understanding her better, understanding what she needs, which is somebody to talk with at a deep level. Once I understood that better and began to do that, that took many of those other issues and pushed them aside, and we get the better simpatico with ourselves. Yeah, we still have stuff we're working. Do not get me wrong, but we have a process to deal with it. We sit down and talk. We share. I even talk about my emotions once in a while. I figure them out, and it helps. And she's been a good teacher in that part for me, as I've taught her about stuff I've also brought to the relationship. So it's been a great way of us supporting each other or nurturing each other in the ways they need it.
Yeah. So you had mentioned earlier that you try to make people come. Oh, not make people, but when people come to these retreats, one of the things that they're searching for is trying to get the same kind of feeling that they had when they first got together, right? I had an interview with my buddy Brandon Kennedy, and I asked him that question because he was describing how the first date with his wife and how they had coffee, and he was like, I was just so nervous, It's like, well, now it's like you kind of know how the story is going to end, and that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
But how do you get those butterflies back? Can you tell us a little bit on that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
no, I don't want to say the spark, because I don't feel like, but maybe it could be the spark.
But totally agree with you, Dennis, and your friend, saying that, with X amount of years you've worked, been in a relationship and maybe have grown apart for a ways, and now are searching for a way to grow together. That experience will never get you back to the starting point, because you have a lot of water that you've learned from each other and learned about yourself. So your relationship will be different. That said, that newness, that spark of the first coffee your friend talked about, you can still experience that by looking into your beloved's eye and still see the twinkle and still see there's more to be found out, more to discover, more to connect with. That's in love. That's the depth that you can feel in an excited, high vibe relationship. So heck yeah, it's a different spark, but it's a spark nonetheless.
Yeah.
And I think we all want to feel, I mean, we all want to wake up in the morning and roll over and see our beloved and just go like, oh, aren't I the luckiest guy?
Mm.
I'm just like, I do a lot of my gratitude in the morning in bed before my wife wakes up. I'm sitting here with the hands on the heart, just saying, thank God that she's here. Thank God that we're working together. Thank God we're doing this business together. Thank God we're writing this book together. Thank God for our family. Thank God for our friends. I mean, I just go down the whole list because our life is so enriched by being together. And from that moment she wakes up, and I never used to cuddle. We cuddle in the morning because we want to know the first thing and the last thing of the day is we're with each other. That means a lot to us. And we say we love each other. And if you start that way, yeah, you get some bumps in the middle. But you come back to that. Of course, we always say, don't be angry when you go to sleep. Once in a while we are. There are some times where I would say something stupid and I would not apologize to her because I had this thing about in the past years, I wouldn't apologize. And she would wait patiently, sometimes on the far side of the bed with her back to me. Oops. Well, it happens, man. Come on. And she was trying, and she taught me in essence on how to apologize, which I find is an invaluable skill. There's like 5 different steps I have to go through to deeply apologize. And so I learned from her how to do that so that when I connect, because she wants to be deep. She doesn't want to have the service. Oh, I'm sorry, honey.
Yeah.
Doesn't really go very far, does it?
No.
Because for her, what she wanted for me to do is understand what I did or said, some dumb thing, what she got from that and what she felt from that. How did she feel as a result of my indiscretion or whatever it was? And that for me to recognize my behavior induced that in her, it was my fault, not hers. Well, honey, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Ooh,
that one doesn't work. That one doesn't work. Fail the test. You don't understand. If you can't sit in your partner's moccasins and feel how they felt when you said or did that, whatever thing is that they went off the rails on because of you, and take full ownership and responsibility for the emotional state you caused and apologize for that. And then at the very end, this is the hardest part for me. I don't know about you, Dennis. I will never do that again. Now, the rationalist in me says, I'm going to do it again because I'm human. I'm going to screw up, right? So I refused. It's like the S curve. Like the longest part of learning is always the last bit. So I got the first 4 or 5 steps right. But that last step, I just couldn't say, I'll never do it again. Because I said, I knew I'm going to mess up. I'm going to trip over. I'm going to say something silly. I'm going to cause this again. And with my integrity, I don't want to lie to you. So I'm going to say, I can't say that. So how do you break that impasse?
It's tough.
Well, how I did it, I mean, yeah, it is tough. I mean, everybody might have a different approach and might be different because the relationship is different. But what worked for me and my wife is that she came into my office one day and she comes in and then I had this thing. I was like, like this. I get like this. And that was the number one thing. It was an automatic response on my part based upon some growing up things that I had to work with. She took it like it was an offense, and it was really not intended. And so I kind of apologized, and I couldn't really get to the apology piece. And so I just stood up out of my chair, walked over to the door. She was standing there, and I came up and I was crying. I said, look, I know I can do better than this, but I keep making this mistake over and over. If you give me a chance, I'll continue to get better and better. I apologize for this. And when I said it that way, when I said, look, I want to be perfect. I want to never do this again. Just, I'm working on it, baby. Can you just feel how I'm feeling trying to connect in with you? Because I don't like hurting you. I love you too much. When I came that way with her, because she wanted the deep, she breathed, smiled, and hugged me and kissed me. So I'm not saying that works in every case. It's not a trick. It's not a technique. but it was me being emotionally vulnerable, which is what she wanted me to be with her on something that was really important. And for me, that was important, my wife, the emotional connection. And so she's taught me that deeper connection with my emotions, my heart, than I've ever had before, which I'm thankful for.
Yeah, I really don't know what it is about us as men to not want to say sorry, or it's definitely an ego thing. And I'm not saying it's just men, because I've
Come on,
seen
we
it.
can't cry in locker rooms.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
can't do any
I
of that
was in
stuff.
football, and suck it up, man. Hit him harder. It was never about, oh my God, the guy's hurt. People were
Yeah.
screaming like, "Well, you hurt him." I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of bad." So I'm
Mhm.
sorry, but that's wrong. I mean, competing hard is one thing, but getting hurt is a totally different thing, because I had a different viewpoint on sports. So anyhow, so I think you're right. So it's hard for our upbringing, and I think that's the reason why the comment earlier we talked about is how younger men now are having a big difficulty, because what is their weather vane? What is the way they can look at relationships going forward? And I don't envy them, because there's so many social media misrepresentations on what relationships are and aren't. I kind of grew up in more of a traditional and a Midwestern, like, this is right, this is wrong, to do this, do
Yeah.
that, but it's harder today. So I don't know how to answer that question. It's a great question you ask.
No. Yeah, it's hard for us to be in the field, the firefighting field, because we don't talk about feelings at all. And it's not even becoming more popular. The whole PTSD is running rampant in the
Sure.
profession. That's one of the reasons why I started this podcast, so we can have the conversation about wives,
Nice.
because at the end of the day, it's not about, it's about the job when you're doing the job, right? But we got to know that the job is going to be over at some point.
Right. And taking it home is hard for your wife.
It's hard. It's hard. And I'm lucky in the sense that my wife does the job. So I have somebody that I can talk to about it. But that's not the case, every time.
Right. Right.
But yeah, it's part of one of the reasons why I started this podcast. But getting back to not being able to say you're sorry. Like,
Oops.
for me, no, it's the same. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, it feels like if you had a heartfelt apology, right, it could be over. Or you can just kind of, I don't want to say, I guess, weasel your way into kind of more of a conversation. But everyone does it. Like, I do it. And it's like, why? Like, at the time, there's times where I go in the bathroom, I'm looking at myself in the mirror, I'm like, dude, just say you're sorry.
Oh yeah.
You don't. Yeah. Like, why is this so hard?
Right.
But it is.
It is, and I don't know. Maybe it's genetic, maybe the chromosomes or whatever. But I think all it has to do with the upbringing in our society, what acceptable.
That could be it.
I think part of that. I mean, it's no one or the other. I think it's a combination. To your point, but it's not easy. I mean, in a way, what I had to recognize for me was that there's three pieces to a relationship. There's you, me, and then there's this thing at the top called us, right? When I'm apologizing, my ego has to stay out of it, because when I apologize to her, I'm thinking more about the us part than about the me part, and ultimately about her. So, and so there's a higher thing. We call our relationship a divine union, a divine relationship. One is connected with, source, spirit, whatever you want to call it, universe, whatever you want to say. But if you hold that standard above us as always being the goal to say, I can do better, I can connect with you more at a more deeper level, then it made it easier for me. I didn't say easy, easier to be able to apologize. And I found that, 5 days from a date of my indiscretion to a deep, heartfelt apology was a lot more painful than 4 days, which is a lot more painful than 3 days, than 2 days, than 1 day, to 3 hours, to 2 hours, to 1 hour, to like 1 minute, if not sooner. Because once you get to feel your partner and connect with your partner, and you see, oh, I just did another bonehead thing. Oh, I did that again. And it's straight snap to okay, I got to apologize now. How do I do this the right way right now? Because the longer it festers, the harder it is, because your partner's feeling, because I don't know but Chelsea, your wife, well, my wife is, when she doesn't hear that separation, what does she think? What's she thinking? Rational or not? He doesn't love me. He doesn't understand me. He doesn't get me. This is horrible. What's happening there?
Yeah,
That's not what she wants.
absolutely not.
And
I think
so,
we kind of forget the two that as men, we're supposed to protect our wives and our significant other, right?
right,
You're not protecting her in that realm when you're not
right,
apologizing.
right. And you're
You are
protecting,
making her go a different direction.
right. And you're not apologizing to what she needs, which is an emotional situation that you caused. Oops. Yeah.
So how do you keep your relationship fresh? I know that you guys have been working a lot now, doing the book stuff.
Well, that's been really cathartic in the sense that, we it
Mm.
brings up all sorts of stuff that in
Yeah.
the dark corners that, they were like, well, I guess we really haven't talked about this yet, have we? So I guess it's time. And you work that out, and that's been great. Well, we keep it fresh because, one of the things we try to do, and I'm not claiming we're perfect at this. Again, we're practicing relationship. We're not like
Yeah.
100% good at it. We do check-ins. And the idea is that it's open floor for your partner for 5 minutes.
All
They
right.
get to say anything they want to say. Zip it, listen, then reflect back. So what I heard you say was this. Did I hear you right? Did I understand that? When we were going through the first part of our book, I wasn't really good at that. But we were writing about it, so I said, I got to do better. And then when we got into this one spot a couple months ago, and I asked her, I said, hey, could you just stop? Can we stop here? What's going on here? I said, so clearly I'm not understanding. Can you please slowly tell me what you're saying? And I slowed my voice down. I de-escalated the energy because, getting all excited like that's not going to help. And say, hey, could you please tell me again what you're saying? And she did. And the first she says, oh my God, you're using the process. And you do that over and over. That's, to your point, you're protecting your wife. You're protecting her emotions. You're protecting her boundaries. And you're showing her that I understand what you need is to be clearly heard. But I have to have my ears on and have all the other garbage and noise out of my brain and be calm enough to hear you, to reflect back appropriately that I got the message.
Mhm.
And we also do date nights every week. We have Friday night, we work hard during the week like many people do. And Friday night, there's a local place here that has this gorgeous 270-degree view of the Red Rocks. We go there 5:00 on Friday nights to celebrate.
Awesome.
We share a steak together, share some incredible lobster mashed potatoes, maybe have a glass of wine or whatever,
Mhm.
but have that connection point. Now, we don't do every week because we travel some and do other stuff, but I've got these every Friday night scheduled until now September. Why?
Awesome.
So because we know that we have a night we can go out and do that. We also, once in a while, we travel really well together. And since we're, doing all this and that, so that's really, really good too. So those are the little things that we do to try to keep it alive and fresh. Let's hope we can find other stuff to do in the future. I don't think we have it totally figured out, but hey, we got a few more decades to figure it out. Be cool.
Yeah. Well, it has to be such a great experience to be able to write a book together, and because you're getting to really know how her mind works and what she wants.
Mhm. Well,
I talk about this with other couples. Some people that are religious, they read the Bible,
Mhm.
and they'll read the Bible, and then they'll read a certain verse or passage,
Right.
and then their wife will read it, and then they'll come back and talk about it.
Right. What a great way to bond.
Yeah.
What a great way to bond together
Yeah.
and come to closer together. That's awesome.
And it doesn't, if you're not religious, it doesn't have to be the Bible.
Oh,
Right?
true.
It could be a book,
My
a
Muslim friends
relationship
have
book.
a different book they read, do the same thing. So
Yeah, exactly.
that's not the point. The point is, do you have a common thing, to your point? And can you
Mhm.
get together and share? Yeah, great. I love that.
And then you mentioned the date nights every week. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, see, we don't have kids. They're all grown up, 29, 33. So, they're not in Sedona. One's in London, San Jose. They do their things. We do our things. It's just great.
How did it go with the kids with your current marriage? Were they on board with it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason why they were on board, that they saw how happy I was
hmm
versus how unhappy I was earlier with their mom. And at the same time, they saw how happy she was too. And my kids were older at the time, in their early 20s and mid 20s at the time. And they'd seen enough, relationships go.
Yeah.
And so they realized being happy is really the big part of that. And so when they saw me happy, and even my friends, one of my roommates from years ago, I went out with him end of last year, and he looked at me and said, "I've never seen you any happier ever in your life." And we were guys that came out of college, and we were doing all sorts of stuff in high tech together, and had tremendous careers and all that such, and stayed pretty close. And he seen the difference and said, "Damn, man, you're lighting up every time you're around this woman. What more can you say, right?"
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wonderful.
It's a hell of a compliment.
It sure is. And you're right. The book helped, but I think the other point you made, which is absolutely true, is that it's not just working together, because working together doesn't always provide, calm agreements, because we have two different perspectives. But all these other things lend into the word just came to mind, a tapestry that you kind of weave together, so to speak, of a life that we've co-created together, consciously over the last 7-8 years. And, we tried some things that didn't work. We put them aside, try that worked, stick with it. And we'll continue to do that because, we like our routines. Like when we go out for a Friday night, we eat the same things every Friday night. They come in and they say, the usual, because we like it so much. Why change? It's the same thing with each other. We like each other so much, in addition to loving each other. Why change? Because it's like today we're eating maybe a steak, but it tastes better today than it did last week for some odd reason.
So what's your favorite interaction that you have with your wife?
Favorite? Well, there's this thing. Well, the way part of her, I know you're just going like, what's he going to dial up now? Yeah. It's like, what's he going to? Because clearly I've thought a lot about this, right? For her nurturing needs, she has, again, this is not the love language, it's a little bit different model. There's 12 of them versus 5, but she likes gifts. Gifts aren't necessarily about, I get this or that. For her, gifts is the energy of, I understand you. I know what makes you happy. So I get something that makes you happy.
Okay.
So I went off today. We're getting ready. We're going to have a party at the house this weekend. So I went off and did some shopping stuff. And I always make sure I get a dozen of red roses and baby's breath. I bring them home so we can have a beautiful bouquet of flowers for her.
Awesome.
So and it's random, right? I don't do it every time I'm out, but when I do, it's a way for me to give her a gift. One other thing that I do, and I learned this from one of my older friends here in Sedona, who I just simply adore. He and his wife, I think they're one of those 60-year marriage peoples.
Nice.
And so it's like, they're like this font of wealth and experience and how to navigate the little things in their relationship, and all these great little things. So what he does with his wife, and this is what I've adopted, 10 times a day, he comes up to her and says, "Have I told you yet today how much I love you?" I've said, I'm in. And we actually did a video. It's up on YouTube that we're in the back of a boat on the Nile River, one of our cruises, where I basically was explaining this. And so I just come up behind her and I just whisper in her ear quietly, not making a minute, "Hey, have I told you yet today?" And that connection, that me thinking about her, makes her feel loved, makes her feel thought about. and it just makes her smile. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
And
a special thing.
and it's interesting because a lot of at our office we have some of the ladies and women who work there. I was sharing that story, and they're like, "Oh, I wish my husband would do that." And I'm thinking to myself, "Oh boy, it's hard to find the right thing for each person." But I think the sentiment of really finding a way to connect deeply with your partner is what they were really responding to. So I think, to put it bluntly, it's up to us dudes to figure out what is a way for us to help connect better with our spouses. And it's not their job to tell us, it's our job to figure it out. And I was lucky I had a really, really good friend who kind of shared that with me. And I said, yeah, and tried it. And we've been doing it for 7 years now. I can't ever see stopping doing that with my wife ever.
Yeah, I feel like as men sometimes we're like, oh, well, why didn't you tell us that?
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell us that? Why, if this is the way you feel, why didn't you tell us? Just tell us and we'll fix it. But a part of it is that I think I don't want to call it a game, I guess, but it's kind of like trying to figure out your partner. They shouldn't have to tell you everything.
Right.
It's your job to ask those questions, to have those conversations, and then know what they actually want.
Right. And again, the classic guy thing is, what do I look like, a mind reader?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the classic thing. We say, well, how am I supposed to guess? Well, guess what? You're not a mind reader. Your spouse is probably giving you a ton of hints along the way. Are you going to observe the smiles, the facial features, the body language of happiness whenever you're going through the day to see, is there something going on I'm doing, saying that's making her feel happy or not? Are you tuned in? I mean, your partners just want to know, are you tuned in enough to me to catch these things? And I think that's what they're really saying. If we, I'll just say it bluntly, guys, if you want to just be more observant, hate to say it that way, watch them and watch what happens. I mean, sometimes you'll see them with their friends and they're doing stuff and you'll see, oh, they lit up when that happened. What's going on here? And is that something that's appropriate for me to do? Because obviously friends and relationships are different, but is there something appropriate there to do or not? If there is, try it out, experiment. I mean, I didn't come up with this stuff as if the first time out the gate it worked. I came up like, I'm trying different stuff. Sometimes I get to look like, you just use what? And it's like, okay. But because my wife knows that I'm trying, look, we have another game we play that keeps it fresh.
Okay.
It's called points. We give each other points. So, for example, today I brought back roses. I got 50,000 points, man. 50,000 points. Wow. Ooh, wow. Right? So it's a way to keep it fresh. So again, we all have different ways of doing that, but we use the points game. And, since we're both kind of type A's, we count stuff. So there you go. It works.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's just one of those things where I feel like as men too, we focus so much on our jobs, right? Working all those long hours, and then we get home and just want to relax.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean,
yeah. And as men, we understand that, right? But at the same time, if your wife's home, I mean, how much do you want to relax? There's there's a couple books that talk about a reentry time.
Right.
And that's big for firefighters. And it could be, I'm lucky enough to have an hour drive home, if you consider that lucky.
Well, some do, yeah.
Yeah, but I have that time to kind of get my mind right. So when I walk in the door, I'm good. But some people, they don't have that.
That's a great thing, because a couple weekends ago, we were in a couples group where there were only couples with a mastermind thing going on. And one of the couples who were kind of saying, well, this is our issue. He likes to go off and play weekend golf tournaments with his friends. And so he gets back Sunday afternoon after a long weekend of tournament. As soon as he walks in the door, his lovely wife just jumps on top. And he's like, ah, right? He's like, no decompression time. So during that weekend, you totally understand that. So during the weekend, we were sitting there as couples, and we're seeing these two kind of working out in real time with some facilitation. How do you do that reentry? And what would work for you, sir? What would work for you, madam? And you love each other. And we saw them create a process that they both were going to. You could tell they both like, yeah, this is going to work for me. This is going to work for you. And so there's no one size fits all, or else I would say it. But I think that's a really good point you make. Is it doesn't matter when she comes back from the office. I come back because we sometimes work together. Sometimes we're doing two different projects or whatever. We do need to have that time of, and if you can honor your partner's needs to have that quiet time, because in the old days, in the 50s, right, they'd hand you a drink and martini and say, hey, have a seat. But we don't do things like that anymore. It's a totally different thing. We come back home and, we've got family chores, we got other stuff going on. And sometimes we just need that time to decompress, get back into the family world, and then re-engage. Good for you to be able to have that time to be able to do that. In my opinion.
Yeah. And it's a weird thing to try to describe that to a spouse, and my wife gets it. Luckily, she's in the same profession, so we both get it and we understand it. But like, it's not like you come through the door and you don't want to see your family. It's not like you don't want your wife to be happy to see you,
right,
and you don't want your kid to be happy. You want those things, but it's like, you got to decompress a little bit. And what's the real answer? Like you said, you have to find out for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I also make it akin to the, you're in an airplane and a decompression model, right? The mass drop, you have to do yours first.
Yeah.
Before you do your kids, because, if you can't take care of yourself first, then you really don't have the ability to help others. And I think in that case, that's another evidence of self-care, is, are you taking care of yourself on that reentry process or not? And if you can get that space and understanding from your partners that, hey, this is my self-care time. I mean, when I walk in the door, I'm kind of home physically, but emotionally, mentally, I might need some more time to kind of do that. Give me that time. And I think it's a great way it's a great conversation to have. I agree.
Did you ever have to nurse your wife back to health? Any health issues?
Yeah. Well, first of all, my wife, until I met her, had never spent a day in the hospital in her entire life. Her grandmother grew up to live to be 108 and had 20 children, 20 single births. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Her dad was number 19. So she comes from really good, stock. And she had one day, it looked like she had a stroke. She didn't, but she had the evidence of that stuff, and ended up being here in northern Arizona. It's quite dry, and it's really sneaky in the sense that if you don't hydrate enough, you can actually easily become dehydrated, even when you're just, in an office job like we are, right? So she got dehydrated. So I had to kind of kick the door down in the ER because they weren't really taking care of her soon. I said, well, it looks like she's having a stroke. So, time to stroke, you got to get in here right now and let's go. And got her in the bed, and I took a picture of her panel, because the first time in years, our doctor was actually taking a vacation in Florida. So I, said, here it is. Here's the picture. He said, oh, she's just dehydrated. Get her a big bag of dehydrated. So I, kind of brought the guys in and said, well, sometimes you have to do that, right? And so she stayed that, and they also then, when they did a quick X-ray, they found out she had a congenital thing where I don't know what the blood vessel is from the back of your neck goes up, was a little bit smaller than average. It looks probably is regular thing. So the next day, they took her the next day to the hospital for her first night in the hospital, where she had MRIs and stuff of that area, just to make sure there was nothing funky going on, and there wasn't. But yeah. That was the tough part. Now we did both have COVID when that thing came roaring through in 2019-20. So we both were kind of laid up for a couple of weeks, but we were, it wasn't like we were going to go out anyways, doing anything because everybody was kind of, staying at home trying to, keep everything quiet and all that. And we just got back from our trip in Egypt on March 2nd in Arizona. Was it March 15th? They closed it down for 2 months. So, it happens.
All right. Let's see. So how has intimacy changed throughout the years?
How's intimacy changed? Well, when we got together, I would dare say we were pretty frisky.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's like any new relationship, right? But intimacy for us is more than the physicality, which is what the original statement I made was, because you get to know each other in such. But as we get deeper and deeper in our relationship, there's the intimacy of holding each other, the intimacy of talking with each other, as we talk about on a regular basis. That's a very intimate opening act for both of us to share. So our intimacy is what are the things we do to get closure and more connected in all the levels: mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. So we look at all those areas of intimacy. And we're very conscious about, are we spending enough time in each? Are we physically feeling good about ourselves and each other? Are we in our interactions? Are we feeling good about our emotional connection? Are we feeling good about our spiritual connection? And we do a lot of things where we go online, and we did a weekend workshop that was out. And so we do those things together and share those together and experience those together out in LA. So with a flight and a couple of days in a hotel, and and so those are things we can do together. So those are also very intimate things as well that we look at. So yeah, it's I think deeper is a way to say, but it's wholly an insufficient word because it's at a different level. All these levels, as we get closer and closer, it gets deeper and deeper. But in all these areas, in a very, I hate to use the word multidimensional way, but it's not a simple way to answer. As you can tell, I'm kind of struggling with how to even describe it in words.
Oh yeah,
but it's deeper, it's stronger, more connective than it's ever been, and it continues to be every day.
Nice,
which is cool.
Yeah. So we're coming about an hour 27. I'll ask you a couple more questions if you don't mind. One of the things I do like to kind of end the podcast with, it's a firefighter question. The answer or the question is, do you fart and or poop in front of your wife?
Both directions, yes.
Yeah.
Bodily functions are bodily functions. And some days I'm like, really? You want to stand here and risk your life at this moment? Really?
Yeah, definitely a firefighter question.
Yeah, well, I grew up as a little kid, and we had, as they were potty training us in school, they had a place where it was kind of just a toilet in the middle of and you had to go to the bathroom in front of everybody. It was kind of like, well, can't get over
used to it.
Yeah. Well, it's human nature.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about too was, you mentioned it pretty early on in the podcast, is breath work. You talked about breath work with the retreats, and my wife and I just recently got into breath work.
Cool.
It's probably been a couple months or something. She took a class, and she came back with, some information, and she's like, hey, we should try it out. Like, I think her class was an hour and a half, and then we just watched a 20-minute YouTube video together. But do you want to describe what that breath work entails?
Well, there's many different styles of breath work. I'm not going to claim I'm a breath work expert. My wife more is, because she's actually been trained by people who were Stanislav Grof's proteges on breath work. So it's holotropic breath work. So it's connected breath. Essentially, the idea with connected breath is, again, you guys probably already know this from your training, is that the idea is you're super saturating your system with oxygen. And when you do that, 1,300 or so chemicals naturally are produced and released in your body. Strong antioxidants, strong things of helping emotional stuff. And we do already have 2 hour long breath works as part of our sessions. And we do that after we do some emotional clearing, so that sort of the stage is set to clean out the gunk first, as we call it. Is that now you're sort of a clean tabula rasa thing, and then you go through this big breathwork session, and depending upon the person, you have these amazing, sometimes out of body experiences, but very unique experiences from that. We all have something different. And from that, you can learn and meet some people, say their mothers or fathers who have passed. Other people meet deities. Some people say they meet Jesus, although we charge extra for that, but we don't talk about that. If you want Jesus, an extra $200 we'll hook you up. So it depends, but what it allows people to do is get out of their day-to-day mental processes, enter their body into an altered state. And that altered state provides them information that you can't really find much other way. And when people go home, we're actually doing breath work now on a monthly basis for all of our people, of our clients. So they come in, and then we've got experts who've been doing this and train breath workers across the country using our techniques. So it's a really, really great. And people who do it for recreation, we're not real thrilled about anything like that, because we enter breath work in a very conscious way, with a lot of intention, by opening up space for whatever comes in, and we believe it's a pure connection to the divine in essence. Which, who knows what's going to happen? There again. I made the joke about you might meet somebody. I don't know. You might just not. I mean, my last breathwork session that I had, because I still continue to breathwork. My wife Deborah does too, because we continue to do work on ourselves. My goal of that was to get to a place where I had sort of this quietness. My meditations, the idea is I don't want monkey mind, as many have. I want to have a quiet sort of this Eckhart Tolle, right? Sort of quiet stillness thing going. So that was my goal. And I got there. And literally, when you're in stillness, there's a nothingness to it, for me, in my experience. And so everything calmed down. My blood pressure went down. If I was taking blood pressure, it would have gone down. My HRV would have probably got bigger, because your whole body's just, parasympathetic. I mean, all these things that are happening, just amazing. But everybody's different. So, but that's what we've experienced. Is that similar to what you guys have experienced?
Yeah, so she came back from her class, and she told me about her experiences. It was a lot of cramping up. It was an emotional experience too. At points, she was crying, and she didn't really know why.
Sure.
She said that she saw things vividly and very clear. So when we did it together, I would say taking a break from the monkey brain would be an accurate statement, because you're not thinking about anything. And it's weird. Visions become clear. And this is another one of those things I can't really talk about with firefighters, because they'd just be like, well, shut up.
Yeah, it's like, that's way too woo-woo, man.
Yeah. What are you talking about? You're just breathing. I know how to breathe.
Well, the answer is, okay, man, if that's what you think, come on over our house on Saturday afternoon. We're going to do a breathwork session. And if, you think you can stand for an hour and a half to continuously breathe, if you think you can do that, Chief. Oh, I didn't say that, did I? But you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's a lot easier to say than do, because it's breath work.
Yeah.
A lot of people, well, I just want to, it's none of that. If you want to do it, you have to really, and what happened to your wife was that she was not breathing equally in and out. And that goes in going to oxidation, where you're really, I forget the word for it. So that's not an uncommon thing to do. And lots of times breathwork practitioners are just sitting there monitoring, at least ones we have, they sit there and monitor your energy level to make sure you don't get into those imbalances of breathing patterns, so that you get into the acidic or acidosis or whatever that stuff is, so you have a better, more regulated experience. So it's a trick to it. But again, and then sometimes, depending upon the practitioner, people also apply music
Okay.
to those sessions. I don't know whether you two did that when you were together or not. You don't have to. Our sessions, what we do is we've got sessions where we actually put music that are consistent with the chakras. And so that helps people then open up those energy centers of the body, of the heart, of the throat, and then it aids to their experiences in terms of the breath work. But again, everybody's different, and there's no one size fits all. Some people have a better one where it's quiet. Some people have better when it's with music. Again, there's no one size fits all, but the intention of trying to use the breath as a way. You know how breath work was originally established, right? You know how that started back with Stanislav Grof?
I think it was a monk's thing, right? Some monks did it.
Well,
And
kind of, but what happened was Stanislav Grof was part of Timothy Leary and the other people at Harvard University with Richard Albert doing LSD experiments when they were doing psychotherapy, and they found with their patients incredible, basically divine experiences their clients were having that was psychologically transforming them from being sort of troublesome to clear. And the U.S. government then outlawed LSD. And so Stanislav said, hey, there's got to be a way to have this altered state naturally. So he went over to India and studied with the Vedics over there who were doing a lot of breath work and breath monitoring. The people who would meditate there can turn on and off their organs at will. Wow, that's pretty amazing. So he brought back this breathwork technique, this holotropic, which was the connected breath. And that's where, the breathwork, for at least what we're using and many others have now adopted. So we thank Stanislav Grof for that.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Well, I think that's pretty much all I have for you. Is there anything else that you want to mention or talk about?
Well, again, I'm just going to just to say that I'm thankful for you doing what you're doing. Thank you, Dennis, because the people that listen to you are here for a reason. And I might be an oddball in the sense of stuff I say versus others, but I think at the end of the day, we all have a commonality.
Oh, yeah.
We love our spouses deeply. We care about them, and we're each and every day trying to figure out how we can be a better partner to them. And that commonality to me it's amazing. It opens up so much information. It's so opportunity to help our relationship deepen. So thank you very much for what you're doing. It was a pleasure to be here with you, and an honor to sit around and just interact with you and chit chat about stuff and have a chance to maybe if somebody hears all this stuff, maybe helps them in some way. I think that'd be great.
Oh, for sure.
So thank you very much.
I really appreciate that. It's been great talking to you. A lot of good insight.
Cool.
And yeah, I've always been a fan of people that do the retreats. I think that there's a little bit of a stigma, like we talked about, and it's definitely a positive thing. To get to know your spouse better.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And saying, some people, it means you're injured, you're ill. No, everybody's got core wounds. It's just not everybody's going to admit it. Not everybody's going to realize you can actually do something about that behavior that's a pattern that's not really serving you very well. It's a choice. And if you make that choice, you step into things like retreats, coming out to Sedona Soul Adventures and doing a retreat with us or whatever. That's how we help people. Help them improve their lives. And we get so much satisfaction.
Oh, I would imagine. I would imagine it would just feels so good, like the story that you told earlier. It's like, when somebody comes with the divorce papers and then they switch it around. I mean, that's kind of what if I can get that one time, I don't know how many times you got that, but if I can get that one time, I'm going to feel pretty good.
Oh yeah. Well, again, we don't guarantee results because, because we've got a real good track record. We're like 90 plus 5% plus, because once in a while somebody comes in and they decide, nah, I really don't want to do this. I got drugged in by him or her. And that's our fault for letting somebody in the gates that really wasn't really intending to do the work and be open. But for the most part, we find great results because people are really, really wanting and desiring a better life for themselves and their relationships. And to me, that's all the difference.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Great interview. Good talking to you.
Hey, likewise. Have a great one, man.
Thank you. I just want you to know that it is okay to love your wife.